everybody. Welcome back to Money Matters. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about debt, and I'm going to be talking about how debt impacts your credit score and whether or not to pay certain debts and why. My answer is it depends. So this video was requested by Leslie. So shout out to Leslie for requesting this video. So if you're like Leslie and you have some debt and you would like to find out how having that debt or paying that debt impacts your credit score, then you definitely want to pay attention. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So let's talk about the kind of debt that is reported. So of course, you know, if you have credit cards, your lines of credit will be reported on your credit report, and paying those payments on time every time is going to have a positive impact on your credit score. Conversely, if you don't pay them on time and you miss payments, then that's going to have a negative impact on your score. So you definitely want to pay those on time. Now, lines of credit do have more of a weight on your credit score than installment loans, but installment loans do impact your credit score. And so as far as installment loans, like your student loans, let's just take me, for example. I have student loans, I have a mortgage, and I have a car payment. So when I pay my payments each month, my balance goes down. So when you close the gap between your original loan amount and how much you still owe, that is going to have a positive impact on your credit score. So yes, you definitely want to make sure you're paying down your principal balance. So I try to pay a little bit each month over my installment amount on my car loan, and I try to pay a little bit towards my principal balance because my goal is to pay off my car note by the end of next year. So yes, that is going to have a positive impact on your credit score when you are closing that gap. So you want to definitely consider doing that if you are able to do that. If you're not, then just make sure you're making your payments on time, and that on-time payment is going to impact your score in a positive way. So yes, closing the gap is definitely going to impact your score positively. Now let's talk about that bad debt, specifically collections. So if you, let's say, for example, stop paying on a credit card and your creditor sold your account to a collection agency, and the collection agency's job is just that, to collect the money, and you're trying to figure out whether or not to pay that collection agency. The answer is not a yes or no. Like I said, it really depends on your current situation. It depends on what your goals are. It depends on when you're trying to achieve those goals. It depends on how old the debt is. So let's talk about that in just a minute. So let's talk about how old the debt is. So 7 years, 180 days from the date of last activity on your account is when it is purged from your credit report. That means it's no longer affecting your score. So if you have an old debt, for example, and that debt is scheduled to fall off of your credit report, let's say in a year, then you may want to think about whether it's going to be in your best interest to pay that debt or not, or to just go ahead and let it fall off in the year time. Because if you pay it and you start that date of last activity again, then that's going to stay on your report from the date of your last payment. So you want to make sure you keep that in mind. So you definitely need to know the date of your last activity and compare that to, well, do I have 2 more years left before it falls off, a year, and just make a decision based on that information. So like I said, it depends. Now, there's a caveat to that. Now, while you're waiting, your creditor has the right to sue you for that debt. Now, if they sue you and they get a judgment against you, then that means they can garnish your wages. That means they can take amounts out of your salary. So if you are being sued, do not ignore it. You need to make sure that you are in contact with that creditor and try to work something out before the judgment is filed. Because once they have that judgment, legally they can garnish your wages. So you want to keep that in mind as to whether or not you want to pay the collection agency. You can call them. A lot of collection agencies, they will give you different amounts to pay instead of the full amount. So they might say pay 50% at one time. They might say pay this amount each month, and that will take care of 75%. It just depends on the collection agency. And I'm speaking from experience. I had accounts that were in collection, and I ignored the letters, and my wages were garnished because I was sued and a judgment was filed against me. So ignoring it, definitely not an option. So you definitely want to stay on top of the dates, and you want to definitely make sure that you're not being sued. And if you are, you may need to start talking to somebody, because like I said, if that judgment is filed against you, then your wages can be garnished, because that did happen to me, and that was not fun at all. All right, so the other thing is the statute of limitations. So statute of limitations basically means, and that varies from state to state. So depending on the state that you live in, you need to make sure you check the statute of limitations on consumer debt. Basically, that means is there's a time limit in which the creditor can seek legal ramifications against you, meaning sue you for the debt that you owe. If the statute of limitations has expired, then that means their chances of getting a judgment against you decreases immensely, and basically they can't really sue you if the statute of limitations has expired. Now, if the statute of limitations has expired and they're no longer suing you, that means they can't get any legal ramifications, legal remedy against you. That does not mean, however, that they can't still call you to try to collect the debt, because just because the statute of limitations has run out does not mean the debt goes away. It does not vanish. It does not go into a black hole. The debt is still there. It just means, like I said, they can't sue you, but they can still call you and try to collect the debt. So if you don't want to get the headaches of having them call you, then, or continue to contact you, then that may be something to consider as well. So it depends. Now, let me give you another example as to why it depends as to whether or not to pay these collection agencies. When I got my mortgage, and I got my mortgage back in 2004, when I got my mortgage, there was a stipulation before I could close, and that stipulation was that I had to pay off certain creditors, and I had to prove that I paid the creditors off before they closed on my mortgage. So when they pulled my credit report, they said, okay, we'll give you the mortgage, but we need XYZ creditor to be paid, and we need a letter that shows that you paid them. So after that was a stipulation made by my lender, I had to call the creditors and negotiate a settlement amount. And then when I paid that settlement amount, of course, I said, I need in writing that this account has been settled and it now has a zero balance. That was mainly for my lender in order for me to close on my loan. Now, what happens when you do that, when you settle an account, a collections account, and the 7 years from the date of your last activity is now been restarted because you just made a payment, it's going to be reported to your credit report. It's still a bad debt. It's just going to be reported as settled with a zero balance. And the only way for it to positively impact your credit score is time. It's just that there's going to be time, because the longer or older your debt is, the less it impacts your score. But all in all, it's still a bad debt. It's now a bad debt with a zero balance, but it's still a bad debt. So the only remedy for that is time. It's just for the debt to become older and older. And like I said, the older it is, then the less likely the less impact it's going to have on your score, but it's still impacting your score. Now, some people might say you can pay for deletion. And paying for deletion means when you settle with your creditors, you may say, okay, if I pay you this amount and I pay it at one time, will you delete it off of my credit report? That's all I know about pay for deletion. I've never done that, so I'm not going to talk about things that I don't have any first-hand experience with, but I just know that's what pay for deletion mean, is that you settle with your creditor or you pay it in full and you ask for them to delete it off of your credit report. Now, if you do get it deleted, then that is going to boost your score significantly, because you no longer have that bad debt being reported. But again, that's not something that I have firsthand knowledge of, so I'm not going to speak beyond what pay for deletion means. So again, whether or not to pay your collections account depends on your situation, depends on your finance, whether or not you're even able to settle the account. It depends on how old it is. It depends on the date of your last activity and how much longer you have before it gets purged. It really just depends on all of those things. Like my example, if you're trying to get a mortgage, that might be a stipulation of your lender for you to pay these creditors before you can close on your loan. So that's a big thing to think about when you're trying to decide what to pay and what not to pay. So that's basically the answer. It just depends. Unfortunately, that's the best answer I can give you, but I hope that the examples that I've given you, you can apply to your situation to make a decision as to whether or not to go ahead and pay those collection accounts. But I just want to leave you with that. Having collections on your report does have a big impact negatively on your score. Yes, the older it gets, the less impact it has, but it does impact your score pretty seriously. So whatever you can do to remedy that, then just do whatever works for you, depending on your situation. So I hope that you were able to get some good information about debt and how to handle debt as far as your credit score is concerned. I just want to thank you again for watching for subscribing to my channel if you are a subscriber. And Leslie, thanks again for requesting this video. I hope that you found it useful. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you have not already done so. I appreciate you. And don't forget, everything you do with your money matters.